guys. I get a lot of DMs asking me about book recommendations or people saying that they want to get into reading but they don't know where to start. So that's what today's video is going to be. I have a bunch of different recommendations that I think would be suited well for beginner readers. I think reading is a beautiful thing, and the stories that people write and create are something that should be shared with everyone, and I really like this selection that I have here today, and I hope you guys at least get one really good recommendation that you go and buy. I'm a person that's interested in a lot of different things, so we have like a very wide variety of genres, so I hope that's okay with you guys. My first recommendation is an author, first of all, which is Taylor Jenkins Reid. Her books are so easy to consume, which is why I think they're very good for beginners. She tells stories in a way that makes you not want to put the book down. The first one is Daisy Jones and the Six. You guys have probably seen this all over the internet. It's like went super viral. There's a TV show for it, but basically it takes place in the 70s about a fictional rock band, and it's just a really cool story. I definitely recommend. Again, the way it's written, like, you just don't want to put it down. You want to find out what happens. It's really, really amazing. If you're into like vintage aesthetics like that, I definitely recommend this one. The other Taylor Jenkins Reid novel that I love, I don't have a copy of right now because I lent it to my mom and it's missing somewhere in my house, so I'll have to find that, but it is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. This is about an old Hollywood movie star that kind of chronicalizes her life in terms of the 7 different husbands that she had. There's a little bit of like a mystery and a twist at the end as well, which I feel like is a good way to keep the reader into the story, especially if you are a beginner reader. It's nice to have little hooks like that that keep making you want to read the rest of it. Next book, this is one that I absolutely fell in love with. If you like the coquette aesthetic, if you're into that, this is definitely gonna be your vibe. This is The Valley of the Dolls by Jacqueline Suzanne, and this is kind of a classic in its own, but it is again kind of on the same like thread of those last 2 novels I was talking about. It takes place in the 60s and it chronicalizes the coming to fame of 3 women who are like best friends. And it's just it's a very coquette-ish novel. I 1000% recommend it. This is one of those books that got me out of a reading slump because it was so good I didn't want to put it down, which is why I added it to this list. The next book that I think is really good for beginners, this is Where the Crawdads Sing. This book has a little bit of everything. There's some mystery, some romance. The way the author describes nature in this book I think is very, very beautiful, and it really resonates with me. But the main character is super compelling. Her name is Kaya. She's known as the Marsh Girl, and she's kind of outcasted by the town that she lives in. She pretty much lives in like the swamp, and her family abandoned her from the time that she was little, so she pretty much like raises herself. It's an amazing story. There's like this murder mystery that happens and everyone in town is kind of pointing fingers at her, and it's just again like beautifully written and extremely compelling. Another book that I do not have the copy of because I gave it to a friend is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, and this is like again one of those books that got me out of a reading slump because of the way it's written. Is super duper compelling. This follows a girl who was born in like the 1600s in France, I believe. It's been a few years since I read this. She basically has to marry someone that she doesn't want to marry, so she makes a deal basically like with the devil, saying that she can live forever, she can be free, she can do whatever she wants, but nobody will ever remember her. Like the instant she meets someone, they will instantly forget her as soon as she walks out the door. So she's not able to make real connections with people throughout her life, so she has to find other ways to fulfill herself with travel and exploring the world and things like that. Basically one day she meets someone that mysteriously remembers her, so she's trying to figure that out, and it's just a really beautiful story. If you like fantasy and like dark academia, you will definitely like this one. Next is the Bridgerton series. I absolutely had to include this one because these are my all-time favorite romance novels. As you can see, there's a ton of books in this series, but it follows the Bridgerton kids, and if you have not seen the show on Netflix, like you're totally like living under a rock, because it's like definitely my favorite thing on Netflix. And if you like Jane Austen and you like Regency and you like historical Regency romance, you're gonna love these. If you like Jane Austen but you find it a little bit hard to comprehend and stay with it, then you're definitely gonna want to read the Bridgerton series. It basically follows the Bridgerton kids and all of their love lives and romance, and each one of the Bridgertons has a different book. There's again a lot of different ones in this. I try to thrift them. You can find a lot of Julia Quinn books at used bookstores, which I definitely recommend doing. My favorite book in the series has to be An Offer from a Gentleman. This is Benedict's book, who is my favorite Bridgerton, and his book is kind of like another Cinderella story. It's so magical. It has that like rags to riches trope, and it's just so sweet, and I love this one. I also love Colin and Penelope's story as well, and Francesca's is really good. You don't have to read them in order. That's another thing that I like about these. So if you love you're gonna want to read the Bridgerton series. I feel like this almost goes without saying, but when you're a beginner reader, I feel like the perfect way to really get into reading is reading series, like especially really popular ones like Harry Potter, The Hunger Games, and Twilight. I feel like this is like the holy trinity, and I feel like everyone has to read these at some point. I think I read, like, Harry Potter was the series that made me fall in love with reading. I think I read it for the first time when I was like 11 or 12, and my family was going on vacation, so we took a train up to Oregon, and I remember I read it like on the train, and it was like super duper cozy, and it's just always been one of those books that like I go back and read, and it's just like a comfort book. And comfort movies, of course. I also love The Hunger Games. So good. And the writing in The Hunger Games is like honestly so amazing. I feel like it is so culturally and politically like relevant as well, and I think it's just a really good one to read. I feel like this should be required reading in high school. Like, I feel like this would really actually get students into reading if we read books like this. Really, if we're trying to get like high schoolers into reading, why aren't we reading like The Hunger Games or something like that and analyzing that? Just a little tangent. The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes came out a few years ago, which is President Snow's origin story, and the movie is coming out for that one, and I'm so excited. The trailer looks amazing. It looks exactly as I pictured the book to look like, so it's just something that I'm really excited about. So if you want to kind of be involved with all that, definitely read The Hunger Games. Also, I always take the book sleeves off. I feel like these look so much better without the sleeve. That weird like metallic sleeve, it's just not my vibe at all. And I can't find a hard copy of the first book anywhere. It's so weird. So it's like not matching with the rest of the set, which really bothers me, but it's fine. If you love vampires, you're gonna want to read Twilight, because I feel like it's also a classic in its own way. These books and these movies are so extremely nostalgic for me. I love them so much. I feel like they raised me, you know? I have all these books on my shelf, but I just was not able to get them down at the moment. Everything's fine, it's fine. Just give me another genre in its own, I feel like, is cartoon cover books, and I feel like people on TikTok give people like a hard time for these books, because I don't know why. Actually, I don't know why people give other people a hard time for the things that they read. I feel like if you're reading, that's a great thing in general, and you shouldn't judge people for the books that they choose to consume. Cartoon cover books, it's like basically like rom-coms but in a book, and there's usually like an entire section at Barnes and Noble for books like this. And for me, I like to read these books seasonally, so like during the holidays and like during October, like Halloween books like this and like Christmassy books like this are my favorite. My favorite ones for Halloween time are The Ex-Hex and The Kiss Curse. This is kind of a pair, they go together. This is the sequel to The Ex-Hex. This follows a set of brothers and sisters, and they're witches. They live in like this really small like Gilmore Girls, Stars Hollow like town, and it's just very magical. One thing that I love about cartoon cover books is they always give me Gilmore Girls vibes. Like, I just love that about them so much. It's so comforting. Another one that I really like around Christmas time is Meet Me Under the Mistletoe, and this book takes place in a castle around Christmas time, and the main character, she's a bookstore owner, and she falls in love with the gardener that works at the castle, and it's just so romantic and so cute. And again, it just gives me those cozy holiday vibes. And The Holiday Swap is about two twins that switch places during Christmas time. I grew up loving The Parent Trap, and this one definitely gives me Parent Trap vibes. It's like the same, you know, storyline of the twins switching lives and going on these adventures. And it also takes place in a small Stars Hollow like town. So I wouldn't normally recommend classic novels and classic literature for beginner readers, but if you are trying to get into classic novels, these are the ones that I would recommend for you. First one is my all-time favorite book, Little Women. I so much resonate with this story, and the characters are so extremely easy to fall in love with. And when it comes to classic novels, this is definitely an easier read. You can watch the movies that go along with Little Women, which might help you read the book. It's just such a good story, and it's so comforting and cozy, and it just it makes me extremely happy, and I think everyone needs to read this at some point in their life, and then you should read it again like 5 other times as well. But I feel like all in all, it's like a story of like girlhood, and that's what's very special about it to me. And if you're already a Little Women fan, which you probably are if you like watch my videos, I feel like I just assume everyone is a Little Women fan. So if you haven't read Jo and Laurie, you absolutely need to. This is a romantic retelling of Jo March and Laurie, which even if you're not like a Jo and Laurie fan, like you like Laurie and Amy, I still feel like you would enjoy this book because it really kind of dives into the characters a little bit more and just gives you more content to enjoy of these characters. So I really recommend this one. Obviously not a classic novel, but I just wanted to put it in with that. Next classic that is good for classic beginners is Pride and Prejudice. Such a well-known story, and if you're into Regency and stuff like that, you've probably already seen the movie, which would also help you comprehend the book a little bit more. And I think this is a great one to start with because it's referenced so much throughout novels in history, and it's a beautiful story and I love it so much. It means a lot to me as well. And if you're trying to get into Jane Austen, I would definitely recommend starting with this one. Another one is Anne of Green Gables. Along on the same lines of Little Women, this is a book that just makes you fall in love with the characters so much, which makes it captivating in its own way. This book is actually marketed to be for kids, so that also makes it a little bit easier to comprehend compared to other classics. It's such a beautiful story, and it's actually a series, so there's other books in the series as well if you want to get, if you like this one and you want to get into the rest of them. There's also multiple movies, and then of course there's Anne with an E on Netflix, which is the original show that made me fall in love with Anne Shirley Cuthbert. I definitely recommend watching it. Okay, this one I debated putting on here because I don't know if it would be great for beginners, but I love this book so much and I think everyone needs to read it, so I'm putting it on here. This is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. This story is the most compelling, profound story I've ever read. Like, I love it so much. I just reread it and I notice new things about it every time. And if you're trying to get into classics but you don't know how, or you find them hard to comprehend, I recommend listening to audiobooks of them. It makes it so much easier to understand. The first time I read this, I listened to it as an audiobook. You're still consuming the book, you're just doing it in a different way. Listen to one chapter and then read one chapter, or read along as you listen kind of thing as well. But I feel like everyone needs to read Frankenstein at least once in their life. Also, I love this copy of it. The Barnes & Noble cloth-bound classics have a chokehold on me. They're the most beautiful covers I've ever seen, and I need them all on my bookshelf right now. Another good classic, of course, is The Great Gatsby. I know a lot of people have this as required reading in high school, but I reread this in my 20s and it was so much better then. If you like the 20s, definitely read this one. It's a classic, and it's also one of those that is just referenced throughout so many different books and pieces, so I feel like it's just nice to be in the know. And when it comes to classics, this is definitely an easier one to consume. It is also very short. I love good short reads because they make me feel good about myself when I can finish them really fast. Switching back into contemporary, The Mermaid's Daughter is one that I read this summer that I really enjoyed. This is a modern retelling of Hans Christian Andersen's Little Mermaid, so it's a little bit more darker than The Little Mermaid, but it still kind of references that source material. It is a sapphic love story, and it's just really amazing, and I feel like we're kind of all in our mermaid core era right now, so it's the perfect one to read after you watch The Little Mermaid in movie theaters. The last book I have on my list is actually a memoir, and I'm usually not a person that is super into memoirs, but this book made me want to get into memoirs. This is the best memoir I have ever read. This is The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls. This is one of the most resilient stories I've ever read. The author chronicles basically her entire growing up in an extremely dysfunctional family and how she came through on the other end. If you want to feel something, you should read this book. Sometimes you just want to feel emotions, and that's what this book is good for. I felt like it tore my heart out, ripped it up into a million pieces, and then tried to put it back together at the end. If you like to read real stories from real people, this is a good one and is very captivating as well. Okay, that's everything I have on my list today. I definitely could have added more books onto this list, but I didn't want this video to be too long. I'm going to be doing more book recommendations in the future, so if you have any specific topics, definitely let me know. I think my next one will probably be fall, autumn book recommendations, which I'm really excited about. that video and just autumn in general. If you have any more recommendations that you want to add to this list, please let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. I think that's everything. I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your day or night whenever you're watching this, and I love you guys so much. Bye!